Cristina, thank you very much for being here. We have been here in St. Moritz for a few days together, talking to leaders from all over the world. Very productive days here. But before we talk about what we have been discussing here and your views on the real estate world, can you start by telling a little bit about yourself and your company to our audience, please?
Absolutely. Well, it's been my pleasure to be here with GRI and, of course, in such a wonderful setting as St. Moritz. I am a senior partner at Azora. At Azora, we are a manager based in Madrid, but investing globally, although mainly our focus is in Europe. We are roughly now approaching 10 billion of assets under management, and we invest really across the whole of the real estate spectrum, from offices, retail, a lot in residential, as well as other asset classes like hospitality. We're big investors and believers in the asset class, student housing, and more recently, things like data centers.
Interesting, very interesting. Is there any specific part of the world that you guys invest? Is Europe, or you do it everywhere whenever there's opportunity?
We are very opportunistic, but our main area of focus has traditionally been Europe, and within Europe, Southern Europe. Depends on the asset class. We are investing across Europe as well as in the US. But Southern Europe is close to our roots, being a Spanish headquarter. And it's also an area of Europe where we believe that there are more and more opportunities. So we are always keen to bring to our investors, to open the doors to those regions, help them deploy capital there, and making good returns.
You are exposed to different kind of asset classes, very diversified. So you probably understand what's going on in different markets and in different asset classes as well. Here at the Chairman's Retreat, when we asked our audience what the best asset class to hold in the next, or to invest in the next 12 months, data center was mentioned as one of the most valuable one, followed by hospitality, if I'm not mistaken. What are your takes on that?
Well, we fully agree. I mean, we've been investing in hotels since 2012. We see great tailwinds, and it's a sector where there are a lot of different opportunities, and you can really diversify within the same sector across geographies and type of hotels. And data centers is one that we've started investing roughly a year ago. The reason why we like data centers so much is that we believe that the arrival of generative artificial intelligence will be for data centers a little bit what e-commerce was for logistics, in the sense that we always had warehouses, right? But e-commerce created a huge lack of supply because we needed many more warehouses. The same thing we believe is happening or will happen with data centers. We've always had data centers, but the arrival of generative AI is going to mean a boost in the need of additional space and different type of spaces. And therefore, that's what we are betting on and deploying capital and expect to deploy more over the near future.
Interesting. And when you look at the real estate market, is there any trend, any change that you believe that leaders should be aware of and should be mindful and take action?
I think that, one thing that we discuss at length is interest rates and inflation and what's going to happen with interest rates, right? In our view, even though we see interest rates coming down slightly from where they are today, we don't believe we're going to go back to a world of zero interest rates. And therefore, if you have an environment where fixed income starts being an alternative, an investable alternative again, we think real estate has to shift a little bit and really generate returns that are significantly higher than the fixed income world, right? And one way to do that, without necessarily taking additional risks in terms of locations, in terms of countries, or in terms of asset class, is to go into a more operational sectors, right? So you can still be investing in very prime locations, but yet generate sufficiently higher returns because you are operating that asset in a different way. And it allows you to generate more returns, but also to continue generating additional returns because you can improve those operations. So the world of investing in a prime asset and just relying on a long fixed lease, we think that part of the market is going to become much less investable because you will have alternatives that actually look very attractive in the credit world or in the fixed income world. So that we believe is a trend that has already started, but that will be accelerated, and many more investors will look into that because of the new interest rate environment, which we believe is here to stay.
Cristina, let me ask you a question more about your career, if you allow me. When you look back at your very brilliant career, what's the best lesson you have learned? If you had to pick one, you have learned throughout these years.
That's a difficult question, but I think two big lessons, right? For me, one is focus on what you do well, and focus on your strengths, and don't torture yourself with trying to improve too much the things you don't do well, because at the end of the day, it's a little bit like in sports, right? If you have a very good hand drive, you call it, or left right, you focus on that. You train that twice as much as the other hit. And it's the same thing in life. If you do something well, you should be in situations where that has value and take advantage of that. That's I always tell this to young people because I strongly believe it. And the other thing is take the opportunities, no? Because life is not a straight line and careers are not a straight line. And you have to identify the opportunities and not be scared of sometimes, having a step back or fail at something. But over the long run, taking opportunities when they come, even if that means that, you have to change a little bit course, eventually is what makes you take, a bit of quantum leaps in your career.
Interesting. Very interesting. And a final question, what's the biggest challenge for you now as a professional, as a leader? What's your biggest challenge?
Well, the biggest challenge for us in Azora continues to be to attract more and more capital to these more operational asset classes, to convince investor of their merits, and the same thing a little bit with our geographical focus, right? We think traditional large markets in Europe continue to be very attractive, but when you compare risk-adjusted returns, we think the opportunities are better in less mature markets. And that's the case in Southern Europe, which for us, they are at the right moment in terms of, you're not venturing into frontier markets, clearly, but at the same time, they are far less mature and much more imbalances in terms of supply and demand. So that's our quest, that investors will, have more faith in these operational asset classes and more faith in these markets. And of course, that they will decide to give us the trust to go into them with us.
Cristina, thank you very much.
Thank you, Gustavo.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be here.